So here with more context is Ruby Powers, an immigration lawyer based in Houston, Texas. Ruby, good morning to you and thanks for joining us on the show. You know, when I went to bed, there was one headline. Waking up this morning, there was another headline. So we were confused this morning, just kind of digging into everything. So I can only imagine what it's like on the ground for you. But as we wait on the hearing from the appeals court, who put the state law back on hold, how are you preparing for this eventual decision and kind of this back and forth tug of war that we're seeing?
Well, it is quite confusing because on one day I'm telling my clients, you know, it's on hold and I'm indefinitely. And then the next less than 24 hours, we're saying, no, just kidding. It's actually going into effect today. And then before, likewise, the headlines are changing so fast. I don't think that anyone can sort of keep up with it all. So it is very confusing. It's very much an emotional yo-yo for immigrants here in Texas and those who advocates, and it's quite confusing. There's a lot of technical aspects to this, and ultimately the Supreme Court did ask for the lower courts to decide quickly, and right now, like you said, it is on hold as of today. This is like an hour by hour, minute by minute sort of update, which is quite confusing getting information out to the community.
Let me ask a two-pronged question. Essentially, this case is about whether the states can enforce immigration laws, which it's very clear that that is a federal jurisdiction. No one really kind of argues that. And so Texas trying to kind of fight back against that and say, no, we should have the right as a state to do this as well. And we all know there's a lot of political theater going on. But that aside, that is the root issue. Feds or state can deal with this issue. And it's clear the feds, it's their jurisdiction. However, if it's all the same kind of illegal crossing, why should it matter who's doing the enforcement and the arresting?
Well, they need to work in conjunction, and it is the federal law that that is in charge of immigration. And so it's a matter of constitutionality and precedent. There's also an aspect that the Texas bill and the lawsuits are trying to say that they're trying to protect themselves by an invasion. And so there's another aspect to it as well. So there's a few issues. One of them is procedural and who has the right to hear the case. Another one is about the case about who has control over immigration, which is federal, like you said, and most people agree. And then, so we're like, why is this taking so long to be decided? But it's because of a procedural matter and also the other issue about whether or not Texas has the right to protect themselves. But that also is going to be an issue that is going to go ultimately to, I believe, to the Supreme Court and be finalized that it is the federal government that would step in if there were to be an invasion, right, as opposed as according to Judge Ezra's decision when he mentions that. So,
but you're right on the idea. You're right. The federal law makes it clear this is a federal jurisdiction. I'm asking, I guess, what deficiencies or potential dangers do you think exist if that authority is given to the locals instead? What's the danger in the local authorities being able to enforce the law as well?
Well, the thing is that it needs to work in conjunction with the federal government. For example, there's so many reasons why this bill is going to be very confusing. If local law enforcement they're going to be trained somehow on everything about immigration, that's going to take a lot of resources that they don't have. Second of all, judges are normal state judges who are not trained in immigration are not proficient in immigration. Third, where are they going to detain people? Or are they going to have access to attorneys? The federal system has a complete system in which people have ability to reach attorneys. There's a whole cohesive system. And so if they'll almost be running like a parallel state immigration system in the way that this bill is designed. And so it is better for them to be working in conjunction than to try to be working in parallel. And so that is why this issue needs to be resolved very quickly, because it's very confusing and very dangerous for those people at the border. But it's also very damaging to those inside Texas, because it makes everyone on edge, especially if they don't have a status or they have a status pending. And so that is why it is very cumbersome for the entire state.
So when the decision by the Supreme Court was released, Texas State Rep Jean Wu tweeted on X in response about knowing your rights when it comes to the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment. What advice do you have to add to this? And those amendments there are listed on the screen for our watchers at home.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of great information out there, especially the ACLU, and this is great information to be presented to the community. I would probably suggest, I mean, right now it's on hold, but if it isn't on hold, I would suggest having a copy of your documentation, but also you can refuse certain information. I think, though, it's going to be really confusing for the immigrant community, because they'll still feel afraid as if they would be detained for some other violation, even if it has nothing to do with immigration. For example, if you don't have status in Texas, you can't get a driver's license. And so therefore you would be pulled over, could be pulled over for no license. And then that could lead to a whole nother chain of arrest and search and seizure. So there's a lot of issues. Of course, it's great to know that those rights, but I think, like, in practicality, if people don't stand up for themselves and don't know what to do in the moment, then it's going to lead to a lot of, I think, eventually, like, illegal arrests, especially if they're basing it off of SB4. One other thing to note about SB4 is that it's for people who entered illegally within the last 2 years, because there's a statute of limitations on the misdemeanor. And the issue is that it's supposed to be enforceable anywhere in Texas, which is confusing, because how is one supposed to know if a person entered illegally if they are super far away from the border? And so I think that this is rife for racial profiling and discrimination. And because what does an American look like, and what does a person who has status look like? That there is no look. There is no way for someone to know that. And so the whole probable cause will later be challenged, but that is where there are so many reasons wrong with this bill. And we've only discussed some of them.
All right, U.S. immigration lawyer Ruby Powers, thank you so much for your time and your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Julie?